Welcome into a Tuesday edition of Daily Faceoff Live. We are streaming live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube, and as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk and Carter Hutton with you. Huts, I'm back.
Yeah, you are back, buddy. How was your trip? I'm jealous because I've been in the Waste Management. Arizona's a ton of fun, so I hope it was a blast, my man.
Yeah, it was great. Bunch of beers, bunch of sun, watched a ton of golf. It was awesome. Recharged, ready to go for the second half of the season. And, of course, the second half of the season begins with the Milan games. Have you been tuning in? I mean, the women's hockey is underway. We'll have an update on Marie-Philippe Poulin coming up a little bit later on in the show. But a handful of other events underway. Have you been tuning into anything?
Buddy, our TV doesn't turn off. I feel like our kids love it. It's like a green light of screen time. And I do enjoy it too, like all the different events and everything's that gone into it. What I did love the other day was the slalom downhill snowboarding. That was awesome, where they like go toe-to-toe, head-to-head. I thought that was unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, that was cool. Canada this morning picking up a silver in one of the speed skating events. And I don't know if you saw, but the men's hockey team was in attendance as well, or at least a big portion of them were there watching along. So, again, always cool to see the different athletes and how they kind of all interact. There's some great photos going around of the Canadian players and all their reactions when there was a big crash during the race. So the Olympics are in full swing. And, of course, the men's hockey tournament gets going in right around 48 hours from now, a little bit under 48 hours from now. And that's, of course, going to be the focus of today's show. Jeff Marek is going to join us for our big segment. We'll get his take on a handful of big storylines and questions as we inch closer and closer to the beginning of the tournament. But Huts, let's start. We'll do a Canada segment. We'll do a USA segment. Then we'll hit on a few other things. But beginning with the Canadian side of things, Canada bringing back a roster with 19 players who are returning from the Four Nations face-off. But two of the fresh faces in Macklin Celebrini and Tom Wilson find themselves on the top line with Connor McDavid. What was your first reaction when you saw this? And, I mean, we've gone through a number of practices now for Canada. This wasn't like let's see how they look in a practice and then go back to something maybe a little bit safer or more traditional. It really seems like John Cooper is going to run with this heading into the tournament.
You know, I like this. You know, this was a factor, in the Milan games preview I did with Jeff Marek, which is out now. This is something we talked about, right? The fact that they lost Braden Point and they replaced him with Seth Jarvis. They didn't go with another top six player that was available because I think they had these intentions of having these guys in that position. They wanted Jarvis for his penalty kill, his speed, where he can play in the lineup if he gets inserted in. So I like this. And I like the fact that Macklin Celebrini has built up the rapport with John Cooper in the way that he can play, that he's trustworthy, right? Yes, he's a youngster, but he's built that up. And then on the other side of it, Tom Wilson, John Cooper talked about it. Like, is there a better F1 to be in this situation? Like the fact he can go in and he can be a heavy body on the forecheck. He can get McDavid the puck. He can go to those tough areas because you get to watch McDavid probably more than anybody. The factor is like you have to go to those tough areas and he will make it easy for you. And at a time, just getting out of this way, creating space. So I love it. And again, look at those three centermen right down the middle, McDavid, McKinnon, and Crosby. Like, how can you go wrong? And I wouldn't be surprised at any point you see it mixed up during a game. But for right now, I like where this is at.
Well, remember, in international hockey, you can dress the extra forward as well. So that is another thing here, at the Olympics, that Canada and John Cooper will be able to do. When you look at this top nine, and we'll leave the fourth line out of it, because I'll be honest, when I look at that fourth line, I kind of raise my eyebrow and go, like, it seems like a little bit of a mishmash of players there. But when you look at the top nine, is there one of those lines that you're less convinced will work and will be able to stick throughout this tournament?
I think it's the third line, right? When I look at Crosby, Stone, and Marner, like just the lack of speed. I think there's a lot of defensive awareness there in a responsible line, but I feel like then maybe you're underestimating what Mitch Marner can bring to you offensively, what Sidney Crosby can do paired with someone else. So I think those lines might mix around a little bit. And like you said, the fourth line, it feels odd for me seeing Sam Reinhart on the fourth line. I know he is a guy that's not known for his unbelievable speed, but his hockey IQ and goal scoring ability are ultra high. So I don't know if this is maybe a feel out, right? But I do think you have to match speed with smarts. And I think this is what they're trying to go for. But if I do see a line changing quickly, it does feel like that third line where maybe they inject a little bit more speed onto it.
John Cooper talking yesterday about his goaltending and how excited he is for them to go out and prove everybody wrong. Obviously, when you look at Canada, a lot of people are quick to point to the situation between the pipes as their one weakness. When you look at the blue line or at the goaltending situation, Cooper also had a line something to the effect of what you've done in the past will have an effect on this. Do you think starting Jordan Binnington in game 1 against Czechia is the right move here? Throw him right into the fire against the team that is, undoubtedly the toughest opponent you'll face in those first 3 games.
I think so. At this point, it feels like John Cooper has that bias to him, then his confidence hasn't really wavered in a sense. My concern is, can he just turn it on, right? Where last year when I looked at Jordan Binnington, he stayed out of the nonsense. He seemed so dialed in and was so ready for the Four Nations Cup, where this year I don't feel the same heading in, right? I know it's a one-game show and they have experience. And for Logan Thompson, he's kind of new on the scene, right? Like, this has been a few years of him being good, but he hasn't really played. He hasn't won a Stanley Cup when you're talking about pedigree. And then for Darcy Kuemper, age is against him. But you got to remember, John Cooper watched Darcy Kuemper win a Stanley Cup in Tampa Bay against him for the Colorado Avalanche. So he has that reminder of how he can play in big games against his, team that he knew was able to win a cup, and Kuemper was a good difference maker. So I think he goes with Binnington just to instill that confidence. And we look at Binnington between the years, he'll be ready to go, but I just don't know if it stays that way. I'm concerned with the season he's had.
I'd be really surprised if we see Darcy Kuemper in this tournament. I think you kind of go Binnington out of the gates. You give Thompson the second start. Whichever one of them maybe played the best, you give them that third game against France. And listen, not that the France game is going to be the be-all, end-all or be any sort of legitimate test for Team Canada, but you give that guy the second game to kind of keep him fresh. And then after that, you are playing elimination games. Like, this thing is going to fly by really, really quick, and it's going to get, to use the old line, it's going to get late early in this tournament. Like, you're going to blink, and it's going to be the medal round. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about Team USA. Not a lot of question marks about their goaltending, Connor Hellebuyck, and I do think it's funny, like the lingering thing with Hellebuyck that stuck with him from obviously the NHL and the Stanley Cup playoffs is like, oh, he crumbles in big games. He crumbles in big games. You look at how he played at that Four Nation Faceoff, Huts. He was unreal in that tournament. He finished with a .932 save percentage. And again, like, it's revisionist history. It's whatever. If Austin Matthews scores on Jordan Binnington, we look back at that performance Connor Hellebuyck had in the gold medal game or in the final of the Four Nations Faceoff, and we sit there and go like, wow, Connor Hellebuyck had his statement big game. It obviously didn't play out that way. Connor McDavid beat him. Canada won. But I think people are talking about a USA goalie situation and having a conversation that I don't think needs to be had. I think this is Connor Hellebuyck's crease the whole way.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I've kind of stood by that for a while now. And yes, this year hasn't gone great for the Winnipeg Jets or Connor Hellebuyck missing times, but he's been rock solid, for the last, I don't know how many years now. I remember playing against him. It was like, oh shit, we have to go up to Winnipeg. We're going to lose 2-1 or 1-0 because he just doesn't make any mistakes. And then you pair that with what they have in front of him. I think that bodes well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ottinger for a game, if it gets out of a rhythm, but I think he would have to play very, very poorly to play himself out of the starter's crease. And again, Jordan Binnington was just a save better. And what I talk about a lot, and we will talk about it more on this show, is these are NHL goalies, right? So it's not like the drop down is huge. Anyone that plays in the NHL, trust me, from goalie 1 to goalie 64, can steal a game, can be a difference maker, can have that in their arsenal. It's just a matter of who is hot at the right time. And consistency wise, Hellebuyck is going to be the guy.
We'll get into this part of the conversation more with Jeff in a few minutes. But when you look at this American roster, we got the big, beautiful lines up from dailyfaceoff.com that you can all go check out. Can you find a flaw? Like, the blue line is undoubtedly better than Canada's. The depth, as much as there was a bunch of, hand-wringing and, oh, how did you bring JT Miller? How could you bring Vincent Trocheck and Jason Robertson and Cole Caulfield are at home? Like, I understand all that, but I still just look at this forward group and I'm like, man, we're talking about, again, the complaining of you left Robertson and Caulfield at home. Jack Hughes is playing on their fourth line. Like, they're so deep. The goaltending is so solid. The blue line is so mobile. And then you mix in a guy like Jacob Slavin, who might have been their best player at the Four Nations Faceoff. I cannot find a flaw with this team.
No, it's tough to see. I think it's going to be how guys answer the bell buying into certain roles, right? And I think that's where you look at Jack Hughes, where you look at Kyle Connor, who wasn't in that final last year. And was that a mistake by United States when they look back and they, didn't have that finishing touch.
Yes.
For me, I think this is going to be a big battle of, who can grind in the trenches. I think Dylan Larkin was unbelievable. It almost felt like a bit of a coming out party at the Four Nations Cup that he is one of the elite. So down in the lineup and how good Brock Nelson has been, it's going to be that superstar status and leadership I think you go back to, right? Because when you look at Team Canada, I saw a comparison the other day of captains and, Austin Matthews having a couple playoff series wins compared to Sidney Crosby, who has the accolades coming at him every which way. So it will be a battle of, a test, but on the back end, that is a scary defense. There's really no holes in it. I think with Adam Fox not being there, it almost fills the gap of there really is no gap. This team is unbelievable on the back end, but who can be the game-changing players? I think that's what it's going to come down to when you talk about the big two here.
Yeah, margins are obviously going to be super thin. Let's play a little fill in the blank here to round things out at the beginning of the show. Outside of Canada and USA, you can kind of go through the groups and, pick up who the favorites are. Again, Sweden, Finland, that might be a bit more of a coin flip there in Group A. But Huts, your first fill in the blank. The country that people are overlooking is blank.
Oh, man, there's a lot to pick from here because there is some stars, but I'm going to go with Czechia. I think Czechia is a team that gets overlooked a lot when it comes down to it. And these are teams that have played well. They're coming off a 2024 World Championship victory where Lukas Dostal was unbelievable. He was a big X factor in that. And again, goaltending can be an X factor. We're not far removed. I remember waking up at 4 a.m, my dad, to watch the Czech Republic game against Canada and Dominik Hasek stealing the show and winning the gold medal. So goaltending can be a big factor here. And again, you have a top line with Marty Necas, Thomas Hertl, and David Pastrnak. They could get you a goal, win a power play. And if your goaltending can be good enough, you never know with a team like Czechia, Ty.
And again, the officiating at the international level, you don't see the same level of, and I know it's going to be a little bit different, or there's been talk that it'll be a little bit different, but you don't get the same level of game management. You can rattle off 3 straight power plays that could give you a 1-2 goal lead. I do think we as a collective are kind of sitting here going well, it's Canada, USA for the gold at the end of this. Everything else is just kind of for fun, and we'll have some good games, sure, but it'll just end with Canada and USA. And I think back to 2010, everyone went into that Olympics in Vancouver going, oh, I can't wait for the gold medal between Canada and Russia. It's going to be, the old go good versus evil, Crosby versus Ovechkin. We had that whole thing written out and mapped out. Canada goes 1-1-1 in the round robin. They have to play the Russians in the quarterfinal. And they ended up smoking them. It was a crazy game. But it just never plays out the way that you think it will. And Canada opening with Czechia, again, it's not a game that I think they can obviously take lightly. I was on Jeff's show yesterday. I talked a little bit about Team Germany and how, again, I think they're getting overlooked a little bit in terms of how tough of a test they could be for some really good teams, and someone's going to throw a curveball. I do not think we're going to go through the tournament and have in every round robin game, the team that's the favorite just walks over the other team. There will be some stunning results throughout this thing. Last one for you, Huts, and then we'll get to Jeff. The most overlooked player on either the Canadian or American roster is blank.
Well, this was a tough one for me, right? Because it's these players aren't really overlooked, right?
They're
the best in the world. They're unbelievable, right? But I think the one for me for Team Canada that I don't think has got a lot of light shed on him is Nick Suzuki. How good this player is, well-rounded, how he makes everybody better. You look at the Montreal Canadiens and everything runs through Nick Suzuki. So I think he might be that Swiss Army knife and player for Team Canada. Going into it, we think about the big dogs, right? We think about the X factors, McKinnon, McDavid, Crosby, Celebrini, where Suzuki might be an X factor. And then on the other side of it for Team USA, again, a guy that never got any love last year at the Four Nations Cup, scored the winning goal for Team USA at the World Championships to break their drought, is Tage Thompson. I think Tage Thompson can be the X factor in this tournament. His ability to protect the puck, his speed, his size, his range, he might be that game breaker player that they missed from the Four Nations Cup, in my opinion.
Also, that big body, the neutral zone being as small as it is, Tage Thompson takes 2 strides, and he's from blue line to blue line on this ice in Milan. The one guy, again, it sounds dumb to use the word overlooked when we were talking about superstar players, but I think we're kind of forgetting that they didn't have Quinn Hughes on that blue line last year. And that top pairing, Charlie McAvoy was great, but But now you have Hughes on that top pairing with McAvoy, and you want to talk about a duo that, can bring a little bit of physicality with McAvoy. We saw that last February in Boston and Montreal, but now you pair that with the elite puck moving of Quinn Hughes, and it's like, yeah, if there's any two defensemen that you can throw together that can go and try to mitigate the likes of Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon, like it's a Charlie McAvoy Quinn Hughes pairing. I think back to the playoffs a couple years ago when Hughes went toe-to-toe with McDavid. So I think, again, we're maybe overlooking, again, maybe not the best word for this, but the impact of Quinn Hughes on this blue line and what he could bring. Like, again, we're forgetting that he wasn't there a year ago, and USA obviously was right there with Canada and beat them in the round robin of that tournament. Let's get out to our big guest for the day, Jeff Marek from The Sheet, joining us as he does every Tuesday. Always a pleasure to be joined by our friend Jeff Marek, live with The Sheet, coming up in about 45 minutes time here. Jeff, what did you make of our little conversation there about overlooked players? Is there anyone that jumped out the page?
I loved it. I loved it, and I love the idea of like overlooking players that are on like these glorified all-star teams. I honestly, I get the point. Like, who's overlooked here? Well, certainly not in their local markets. Like, I think that there's some players that'll jump off the page for casual hockey fans that may just root for their team in their local market. Like last year, Tyler, like I heard you mention, Jacob Slavin. Like I thought he was the best player last year at the Four Nations. I thought Dylan Larkin was close behind him as well. And if you're a fan in Los Angeles, how much do you know about with all due respect, Jacob Slavin, and how much do you know about Dylan Larkin? But as far as overlooked, okay, and trust me, this is not a hot take. I legitimately believe this, okay? And I want to frame it one very specific way. So on my set in the corner, I have a picture of one of my favorite goaltenders of all time, okay? So this is Gilles Meloche. This was a present from our boss, Amel, a number of years ago. It's even autographs. This is Gilles Meloche when he played with the California Seals in the early 70s. Now, Gilles Meloche was as good as, in his era, Bernie Parent, Ken Dryden, Jerry Cheevers, Tony Esposito, Billy Smith, all these guys. The problem was Gilles Meloche played for the Seals and the Barons and a bad Minnesota North Stars team. So he never got to play on the Flyers and the Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens, where he could really distinguish himself and get into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Goalie is such a very, and Hutton, I know the choir with you, it's such a unique position in that you're part of a chain, and if that chain in front of you is no good, chances are you're not going to go to the Hall of Fame. If you put Gilles Meloche on that Montreal Canadiens team, on that Boston Bruins team, on that Islanders team, on that Flyers team, they win Stanley Cups, and he may win a Conn Smythe Trophy. So this is my roundabout historical way of saying the guy that I'm most curious about in this tournament, who we've seen do it before at this high end, is Jordan Binnington. And all the conversation has been around Jordan Binnington is how bad he's been. And make no mistake about it, Jordan Binnington, as we like to say, has been very hard to hit all season long. He's had an awful season. So has Joel Hofer. I think a lot of it has to do with the blue line in front of him and the team in front of that blue line as well. We've seen him win the Stanley Cup. We've seen him win the Four Nations. We've seen him win these big games before. And I always say about pro athletes, and for the purpose of conversation, obviously hockey, you tell a guy he can't do something in the NHL, you tell like a champion that he can't do something. I don't care whether it's Sidney Crosby or Jordan Binnington. You tell someone that they're no good and they can't do this and they're being set up to fail and they don't belong. You don't get into the NHL. You don't win a Stanley Cup. You don't win a Four Nations unless stuff like that bugs you. And stuff like that is like a protein shake. That's why the player who looks like who's not just getting overlooked, but getting insulted through all of this. And what a great story it would be for Canada too. The guy that I'll turn to is Jordan Binnington. And I know he hasn't had a good year, but how much of that is environment and how much of that is Jordan Binnington, and how much, because I just cheer for the story, how much of a great Canadian story would it be if Binnington starts and finishes this tournament for Canada? And again, I believe this legit. This is not just, I'm going to get on the program with the boys and hot take it. Here we go. Clip-a-mania. Let's juice the numbers. I really believe this. I really do.
Yeah, I think there is that X factor too. It's like, what more does he need to do to get that respect, right? Like the factor of like, he's still questioned every which way we turn. And that being said, I think when you think about Jordan Binnington and the pressure and expectations on him, is there any particular player, right? Like we were just breaking down the lineup. And again, in the chat was going off about Horvat, which I think is a good point. What player do you think will outperform expectations? Because like McDavid is,
Horvat's great.
You know, is he the guy, right? Like
Horvat's one of them.
Piece,
he's a big piece that can win a draw, right? Like you look at this tournament. I mean, how many games are going to come down to like you're in your own zone and you need someone to win that draw? Now, Canada kind of has an embarrassment of riches there, and we think of Sidney Crosby right away. But look at Horvat. Like you need a draw. You're sitting on a 1-goal lead. You're facing off against pick your team here, and there's 20 seconds left in the game, and you need to win a draw in your own zone. Who's coming over the boards? Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat is there to win that draw. I love the conversation around Nick Suzuki. You look at players that are sort of poised to distinguish themselves. I think Nick Suzuki is very much in that class. But as far as overlooked guys. For Canada, I think, and mainly because I don't know how it's going to go, but if everything works, maybe Tom Wilson can be that guy. Because the conversation around Tom Wilson still is, okay, is there going to be that moment where Canada regrets bringing him? Like, here's the way I've been phrasing it lately. In the NHL, there's 2 hits specifically. The Hedl hit, and most recently, the Stankoven hit. In the NHL, those aren't penalized. At the Olympics, are those penalties? Those exact same hits, are they penalties? Because they're clean in the NHL. And we look at Tom Wilson, we say he has figured out perfectly where the line is, how to walk on that line and not step over. It's one of the great skills that Tom Wilson has in the NHL. If he makes the Logan Stankoven hit in this tournament, are the officials going to say, Stankoven's got to expect that, or Stankoven's got to lead more with his shoulder, just whip his head around like that coming around the net? Or is it going to be, well, you know what? It's time to kill a penalty, boys. I don't know. None of us know.
Probably the latter. Hutt said something earlier on that I thought was really interesting about how, Canada going with Bennett and then with Jarvis as their 2 replacements, maybe, and not going with a top 6 guy like, all the speculation about Hyman. They kind of maybe knew that we have Celebrini and Wilson, and we really want them playing with McDavid, so we're not going to worry about Hyman or whatever. And as you were talking about Binnington and the structure in front of him and how important that is to his game, that kind of got me thinking, I wonder if they didn't know coming into this tournament, like, hey, Jordan Binnington's going to be our guy, so let's bring the same 8 defensemen. Let's bring Colton Parayko because we know Binnington's comfortable with that group in front of him. Do you think there's anything to that?
I think a lot of it is, and John Cooper referenced this in his conversation with Elliott last week, is that there's a familiarity certainly, and we've gone to war once with these guys, and you're always going to bring in new players to freshen it up. But these are the guys that when you tap them on the shoulder, you have a good idea of what they're going to do when they jump over the boards. Now, when it looked like I could, like whether it's Parayko or Doughty, which would be the 2 possible candidates, I would look at, Evan Bouchard, as we all have, and said, like, I would put Evan Bouchard ahead of those 2 guys all day long, or Matthew Schaefer or Jacob Chikrin. I understand it. But if you want to flash that board up again, Pat, and have a look at Team Canada, the one thing, and McDavid sort of referenced this in that Players Tribune piece as well. Hockey Canada puts a real premium on guys that have won on the biggest stage, and count the cups. Okay, certainly not Macklin Celebrini, but Connor McDavid, Tom Wilson, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, Mark Stone, Hagel, Reinhardt. Go to the defenders as well. Go to Jordan Binnington. It'll probably be the starting goaltender against Czechia. They put a real premium on that experience. You can't say the same thing about where the United States has put their premium. Like, I know, Pat, I'm calling an audible here. But if you could, there we go. Great job. Count the cups. Count the cup. He is. That's awesome. Count the cups, right? Jake Gensel, yes. Matthews, no. Boldy, no. Brady, no. Jack, yes. Matthew, yes. Tage Thompson, no. Dylan Larkin, no. Kyle Connor, no. JT Miller, Brock Nelson, Jack Hughes. Like, there's a whole lot of no's here. And as we sort of all expect this to go this way, where it's Canada facing off against the United States, a couple of different philosophies here, right? The guys that have won before versus we're just trying to piece together lines that we think are going to be successful. And we should point out, as you guys have a murderer's row on the back end. You know, led by probably the best shutdown pair in the entire tournament in Jacob Slavin and Brock Faber. Saw that last year at the Four Nations.
Yeah, and those guys can push minutes every single night, right? And I think that is a bit of an X factor for that team. Now, okay, yeah. Jeff, I'm new to, well, I can't say I'm new to media now, right? I'm with you guys, and I'm from the other side, right?
You're a vet.
Ex-player, right? So for me, this doesn't hold.
Yeah.
I get it and I don't get it. The closed practice to the media. What's your take on that? Like, as a player, I'm like, oh, what does it matter? Like, you still get your interviews, but now on the other side of it, I know it carries a lot of weight. They travel halfway around the world to watch a practice and they're not allowed to. You think it's more than it is?
Why are NHLers at the Olympics?
Grow the game.
Why are NHLers at the Olympics? What's that?
Yeah.
Grow the game.
Grow the game. Grow the game. And there's more of an initiative. Like, for the first time, like, the NHL has finally opened up an office in Europe, right? They opened up an office in Zurich. You're going to see a lot more emphasis placed on global series. I've floated the idea of, if you really want to send an impact, you really want to make an impactful statement, open the season, all 32 teams play their first game in Europe. Like, if you really want to do it, like, as you sort of look at the North American landscape and say, like, how many more nickels and dimes can you pull out of North America? There's gold in them there hills in Europe, and the NHL is now finally starting to put together a consistent and robust internal calendar, paying much more attention to it, specifically after Four Nations, which was an absolute bonanza. But international hockey has always been sort of sitting there, and the NHL has said, how do we tap into it? That's why these players are over there. That's why both the NHL and the Players Association see the value. And by saying, and I know I'm sounding selfish by saying it as a member of the media, by saying, no, we don't want coverage of our practice, what you're doing is saying, we don't care about your initiative. We're just caring about winning this game here, and we're not having eyes on the big picture. I think that first of all, I don't think coaches should be the one making the decision if it was indeed John Cooper. And if it's Hockey Canada making this decision, then shame on them. Because at the same time, as much as it's, win the first game, win the next game, win the tournament, all of it, there is a bigger picture to all of it. That's why it may seem like a small thing, but every tiny little drop means something. Less coverage means less interest, as far as I'm concerned. So no, I don't like it. Not one bit.
For the people who are sitting there going like, oh, who cares? And I see it a lot, the sentiment online of like, oh, the reporters need to watch their little practice, blah, blah, blah. If you are someone watching this show who enjoyed our conversation about Macklin Celebrini on the top line, or enjoyed Jeff's insight about the shutdown pairing of Slavin and Faber, we don't know that that's a line and that's a pairing if there's not reporters at practice.
If Sweden closed their practice, would we know that William Nylander was not there?
Exactly.
That's a story, right? Last time I checked, he's kind of important to the whole machine there with Sweden. But if the practice was closed, would we know that William Nylander wasn't there? No.
Yeah. Again, I think the impact goes a little bit deeper than people realize. Jeff, fantastic stuff as always. What's coming up today on the sheet?
Me and Greg are going to be going on about all the usuals, as you can imagine. Greg Wyshynski from ESPN, and John Lazarus Esquire will join us as well. So Laz is going to be aboard. So looking forward to that. And by the way, Hutz was excellent in our Olympic preview. I encourage everybody to go and check that out at our Daily Faceoff YouTube page, along with Uffe Bodine and Pete Blackburn, both excellent too.
Yeah, it was tremendous stuff. You can find it now on the DFO YouTube. Jeff, appreciate you popping on.
Be good. Drop the puck.
That last thing Jeff said there, drop the puck. Hutz, I'll be honest, we got one more show to do before the puck drops on this tournament. I just want to get to this damn thing. I'm tired of talking line combinations. I want to talk about on-ice results.
Well, you'll be proud because I stocked up on our Canada gear, Team Canada. My kid picked McDavid, so he got a McDavid jersey. And then my daughter got Crosby t-shirts. So, and my wife, we got a hat, everything. We're buying in. I don't know, like, I got to send them to school, and I like want to keep them home because I remember this being an integral part of my hockey development. Yeah. Me loving the game and growing was watching Team Canada, World Juniors, Olympics. And I, like I mentioned earlier in the show, I remember my dad waking me up at like 4 a.m. to watch the game against the Czechs when I was a little kid, and like just a staple in my mind. So I picture that, and I want the kids of Canada to understand how important this is.
Yeah, 100%. There is hockey on today, the women's side of the tournament, Canada versus USA. Obviously, a massive, massive matchup with that rivalry and in that tournament. We'll have a watch-along live on our YouTube. Irf Gafar, who we know well, Madison Packer, and Anne-Sophie Perez are all going to be along for the ride, watching live as Canada takes on USA in Milan. And one big note in this one is no Marie-Philippe Poulin for Team Canada. She suffered a lower body injury in the team's 5-1 win over Czechia yesterday. She will not play tonight. I'll say, Huts, I'm not overly panicked about this from a Canadian hockey perspective because as much as I joked earlier about how you can't just pencil in Canada and USA for the gold medal on the men's side, Sweden, Finland, they've taken some steps forward, but I think you can still kind of pencil in Canada and USA in the gold medal game on the women's side. Slow playing it with Poulin and not worrying too much about this game today, which starts in about 90 minutes. It's the smart play for Canada.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important, right? Let her get her. And she's Canada's so deep too as well, right? That's the other factor. Same thing with the men's side. Is they're deep. They can fill that void, and I think they can still get by because of the lack of parity in the same sense, like you touched about. Other country has gone far. She could be that X factor when it matters most. So getting her healthy and ready to play will be most important for Team Canada.
All right, let's get to our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Huts, we're not going to be doing picks necessarily for today. We might do that when the games get going later on. But there is one here, and yes, I see. Huts has his wins while I was gone. I got it. You updated the record. It's sparkling. He's great. But I wanted to draw some attention to who could be the top point scorer in this tournament. And there's a few factors with this one. Obviously, you probably need that player to be, playing late into the tournament, semifinals at the absolute earliest being an exit point, because then they would still get the bronze medal game. But I'm looking, Connor McDavid plus 400. I don't know if there's a ton of value there. The fact that the gap is so wide between McDavid and then McKinnon at plus 900, man, I think Nate at plus 900 to lead this tournament in scoring is the play. He's going to get power play time, going to get top 6 minutes. He's going to play like with skilled player, all that stuff. Like McKinnon at plus 900 is probably a decent spot.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good too. And so the other factor that I'm thinking about when I look at that bet and when I look at like what's available is like, who's going to be the weakest team in this tournament? Is it France? Is it Italy? Where is that round robin game get up to 8, 9, 10? Go, at times like, this is professionals playing. You can't really let off the gas. So if you could have a game where you get a 6-point night or you run it up a little bit, that's where I think these guys could really, build their tally. Because I think when we get the semifinal, quarterfinal games, there's not going to be a lot of action. It's going to be pretty tight check, especially on the smaller rink.
Yeah, the smaller rink too. I think that's going to open a lot of people's eyes when this tournament begins on Thursday. Is that neutral zone is very, very, very small. Let's wrap up the show. A little bit of garbage time. Going away from the Olympics for a second. This just gave me a good chuckle. They're always doing weird shit in the KHL. Goalie hardest shot competition, Huts.
I love it. This is so funny. And who actually used to have a clapper of a shot like that is Linus Ullmark. I actually pulled up a video I was looking earlier. He hit like 105 kilometers an hour. So he can pound it. So it's pretty impressive seeing these guys do it. And it's the KHL. Anything goes over there. And I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I like the different approach too. He roofed that one, dude. That was a good shot. But look at the big running start here.
Can't even make the turn. Can't even make the turn.
Winding up and whiffing. All of that. Anyways, good stuff. Very funny from the KHL. And again, no Russia, obviously, at these Olympics. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow, Steve Peters is going to give us a little bit of a film breakdown. Canada, USA, Finland, Sweden. We'll kind of touch on all the points of the tournament, our final preview show before the games begin and start to matter. That is a wrap. Enjoy everything from the Milan games throughout the day. Watch along coming up in 90 minutes for Canada versus USA on the women's side. And, of course, the roundtable preview with Pete, Huts, Ufe, and Jeff is available now. Enjoy your Tuesday, everybody, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Marek, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.